When you spend your entire life in the traditional church setting, there's some practices and some principles that we learn, some traditions that we adopt that become so deeply ingrained in us that it can become very hard to let go of. And we enter into a time of stripping some of those things away when we leave the traditional church and we move into a home church. It's a reprogramming process. And it's very similar to a wilderness experience, just like we see in the Old Testament. Whenever they left Egypt and they went into the wilderness and they were on their way to the promised land, God was shaping them into them understanding and seeing themselves as the people of God, as the assembled, gathered people of God in the wilderness. And it took them 40 years. It took a whole new generation, really, to fully understand who they were as God's people, because that older generation had lived in Egypt for their entire lives. They knew the gods of Egypt. They knew the practices of Egypt, the food of Egypt, the culture of Egypt. Egypt had seeped into their bones, and that made it very hard for them to really connect with God, like at Sinai with this new covenant. Even though they went through the Red Sea and they were delivered and they were free from slavery, they still had Egypt in them. You know, it's easier to take someone out of Egypt than to get Egypt out of someone. And so there's a reprogramming that has to happen. And it takes wilderness to really experience the reprogramming, because it's in the wilderness that we learn dependence on God, because we cannot make it without Him in the wilderness. And there is a sense in the traditional church that we can orchestrate things in such a way that we can make it without Him. And I say that hesitantly, and I say that only personally because I operated that way for quite some time, where I was in charge and I was in control and I was running the program and I was coordinating all the pieces, and I did not really always rely on God in a way like I should. And so if you're in ministry in a traditional church and you're breaking away from that, the separation and the reprogramming and the scaling things or breaking things down is an even tougher process. It's even can be a depressing, anxiety-producing process, because so much of your identity is wrapped up in the traditional mindset of church, that there's a lot of things to strip out that are very hardwired in there. So I want to talk about the kinds of thinking that we have to reprogram when we move from a traditional church setting to a home church setting. And I would love to hear from you in the comments of things that you have had to strip down. Jesus said in Matthew 9 that if you take a wineskin and you take an old one, an old way of thinking, and you pour new wine into an old wineskin, that the wineskin bursts. Why is that? It's because the wineskin, when it was new and you put new wine in, as the wine ferments and expands, the new wineskin expands with the new wine as the new wine becomes like old wine, and the new wineskin becomes like an old wineskin. It all goes together. But then if you say, well, I have new wine over here, I have a new paradigm, a new way of operating, home church, and I'm trying to take a traditional mindset and pour home church into the old wineskin. That wineskin's already had to expand to accept the traditional church model. And now you're putting new wine that's it's needed to ferment in this wineskin, which is going to make this already stretched wineskin stretch more, and it's going to burst, Jesus says so. And some people just break and they can't make the transition. But for those who are willing to do the legwork and deep spiritual work of formulating new wineskins in our mind, the ability to stretch, the ability to embrace new things, the ability to evaluate critically and as objectively as we can the things that we're doing that we call church, and decide whether or not there is a format or a form that better embraces the Bible, the New Testament, that's a stretch. So what kind of thinking am I talking about here? 20 things. Let's just get right to them. Number 1, you're going to have to break the mindset that someone's paid to do the work for you. That you can just come and show up, and you can give, and you can sing, and you can hear the prayers, and you can hear the message, and you can think about it and do absolutely nothing with it if you decide to, and go home and come back the next week and be just fine. In a home, that mindset's just gone. We are replacing the done for you with the done by you and the done with you. You are going to use your gifts in participation in conjunction with the church body to do the work that God told us to do, just as was designed by God himself in the New Testament. There's one body, many parts. Each part has to do its work. 1 Corinthians 12. 1 Corinthians 14, we are here to build each other up, not just one person building up the rest. That is exhausting. I can tell you from personal experience as having been in professional ministry in a traditional church, exhausting when one part must carry the weight for the rest. You're going to be generous. You're going to share. You're going to give. You're going to use your gifts and your talents. You're going to participate in the home church in a way you probably never did in the traditional church. In short, you're moving from low investment in the traditional model to high investment in the home. And as a result, that also moves you from low transformation typically to higher transformation, because the more intimate and participatory you become, the more transformed you become. And I'll tell you a little secret. The people in the traditional church who are growing spiritually and are being deeply transformed because they exist and they are in there, they will not credit that to sitting in the auditorium listening to a sermon. There are other things that are going on in their life. They're going out of their way to participate at a deeper level in missions, evangelism, discipleship, Bible study, prayer, talking with neighbors. Like these people, the room doesn't do it, right? There has to be those kind of things. And the traditional church model allows you to operate in a way as if you don't really have to do those other things in order to grow, that you can just come and do these things and then you'll be doing the right thing and the growth will just take place. But it just doesn't really work that way. So you're no longer a spectator in the home, you're an active participant. And as a result of that, you will be an active transformation in a way that is just far more natural than in the traditional church. Not saying, again, it doesn't happen, but it's always happened through participation. And the big room just doesn't facilitate that. Second, there's a difference in connection. In the big church, you can get in and out of many churches without being seen, without being known, without a conversation. You get to determine in the big church your level of knownness. How well do people know you? You can do that in a home church, but it's a lot harder. Like if you come to home church late and you sneak in and you sneak out, there is no sneaking in and out. In fact, you're going to get checked up on. Oh, we didn't get to talk with you. We really missed catching up and all this, because we want to connect with you if you're there. Okay? And if you're not there, we're probably going to notice this a lot quicker than in the big church and be in contact. Hey, missed you today. Many Sundays I just go through everybody I missed. I just text them and say, hey, missed you today. Hope you're well. Praying for you. It's about knowing and being known. It's about relationship and connection. There is no anonymity sitting on the couch in my living room. We are going to know who you are. In the big church, you get to set your connection level. Far less of a thing in the home church. Number 3, the programs get stripped away and you get to see a need and meet a need. In the traditional church, programs are designed to say, well, we need to be spending some time and money and resources and volunteers on missions and benevolence and this and that. And so they have a deacon over building and grounds and over this and this and this and that. And then we'll coordinate volunteers under that deacon. And then we have all these layers of authority and layers of decision making and layers of people under people. And so much time gets spent spinning the wheels of the mechanisms of the organization that the work is suffering, and that the work is not just something where you just see a need and meet a need. Christianity, we love people, we see a need, we meet a need. But in the programmatic space, when you see a need, so you're at the building and you see a need and you go, I better not involve myself in that, because that might affect the children's ministry or the building and ground space of what's going on in that classroom. And if I go in there and fix that thing, then there's probably already somebody scheduled to come and get it. And because there's so many layers of all of that, rather than just see a need, meet a need, dive in. You are the program. There's no program, there's people. You can't just walk past a problem and think somebody else is going to handle it. Number 4, the way that space is viewed and used. The church building is a third space. It's not where you live and it's not where you work. It's an unnatural space. We have created a space that is devoted to that body having a place to very easily sit down, do all the things, and go home. Somebody else probably comes in and cleans it. That means that hospitality is a lot harder to practice in the church building, because it's not your home. It's not when you leave, you turn the lights off and you go, and there's no one there. And it's actually kind of spooky to be sometimes in a church building by yourself, especially late at night. Many times I've been there, done that. And it can be a little weird. It's not spooky and weird in a home, right? It's warm in a home. It's a natural space that we are so accustomed to. Homes have hosts. Church buildings don't have hosts. You might have a greeter at the door, but they don't own the church building. You're not welcoming them into your home and trying to make them feel comfortable in the home that you live, eat, and play in, raise your kids in. It's different. It's a different view and use of space. There is no stage. There are no lights. There is no auditorium. You meet where we sit at night with our family, because you're family. Do you know in the Bible there's 297 instances of the word disciple? It's all in the Gospels and Acts, but then you hit Romans and on, and it changes. The word disciple is never used again. It's family of God, children of God. God is our Father. It's familial household language. The house that meets in so-and-so's house, the house that meets in so-and-so's house. The church is a family, and it is much more naturally a family as it's designed to be in a home than in a traditional third space church building. And when you don't third party out your spiritual space to a church building, and your spiritual space is your home, is your living room, is your backyard, it brings a certain sense of spiritual memory and spirituality into your home in a way that you may not be accustomed to. You're going to form spiritual memories where people were transformed right there on your couch, right there on the floor of your living room in a chair, where people gathered around and prayed, and just God worked in amazing ways. When that happens over there in that third space of the church building, and how we view and use space, then we miss out on some of those personal connections to significant moments. Okay, cut there. The fifth is about seriousness and playfulness. When there are mistakes made in a church building or in a worship service in a big church, mistakes are serious. A lot of orchestration went into planning of who was going to walk where and who was going to do what and go up when and come down. Then this guy's going to go up and go down. And please don't sit in the back and we're all waiting for you to go all the way up to the front, all the way down the 100 feet of the aisle. Da, da, da. Mistakes are serious in big church. Like, it used to stress me to no end when I was in professional, congregational, big church ministry. No, the communion talk person's not here. What are we going to do? Oh my goodness, this is going to be the worst. It was so stressful. It was so anxiety producing. Mistakes were a big deal. But I can tell you in home church, mistakes, they happen. They happen all the time. We just roll with it. We just smile about it. We laugh about it. We help each other. Because we're here to encourage each other. We're not here, well, who got that wrong? And who's to blame for this? And, well, we're going to hear about that in the elders meeting. That's crazy. Home church to me is just low pressure. It's low stress because it's family. And we're here to help each other. And that's just more real life engagement. It's not an artificial thing that you're trying to protect a certain way that things are presented, because if it goes wrong for 500 people instead of like 20 people, right? And we want to protect people from things going wrong because we don't want them to feel anxious or worried that we might have gone off track. Well, in the home, nobody cares. And that takes me to number 6, is the level of control. In the big church, like I'm explaining, there's a great need to control things. And I understand that because you have a lot of moving parts, a lot of people's time, getting to lunch on time, like all the things, because you're going to get complaints about that. Nobody likes to get griped at. So there is a high level of control. And honestly, what that does is it develops spiritually anxious people with a low threshold for anxiety or discrepancies. People are not robust when they're allowed to complain about minutia, and then we just jump all around trying to make sure they're okay. That doesn't happen. We don't see that in home church at all. We encourage emotional and spiritual maturity through discipleship, so that, yeah, they made a mistake. Why is that a big deal to you? You know, you messed up a few weeks ago. Everyone just loved you for it. We don't even have that conversation. That's not even a thing. It's not even happening. In the home church, there's just more spontaneity. It's just more authenticity. There's low control. And when you have low control like that, without being disorderly, I'm not saying we're disorderly, but what happens is things start happening that you did not plan, dots start connecting that you didn't connect, threads start running through things that you didn't put there, and you can see God was working in the gathering in a way I never saw before when I was in charge. And you're free to go off script, which is wonderful. That brings me to number 7, is complaining. One of the things you have to reprogramize yourself on is if you're used to like going to church, sitting in the pew, figuring, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, I don't like that, that song leader was too high pitched, that song was too slow. You're not going to do that in a living room. I'm telling you, when the homeowner and the host invite you in and they come sit with me, how are you? What's going on in your life? And then we sing a song. No one's listening for how well it's performed. That whole up front on the stage and the lights thing sets a kind of a tone, how we use our space and view our space from a couple, that's number 5. It sets a tone of like professionalism instead of like family. We don't get complaints. I don't feel complaints. We don't have meetings about complaints. People don't complain. They come to give. They come to serve. They come to love. And if something messes up, we just move on. That's going to be an adjustment for you if you're used to the consumer mindset, which we'll talk about in just a moment. I am not going to walk into your house and complain about the color of your carpet, but I've heard it many times in church. Like, oh, look at this carpet. Look at these pews. Can you believe it? No one would ever do that in your home, ever. It's so petty. But we feel justified to do that in that third space because we've paid for that. We give our donation and we've paid, we get to complain because we pay for that. That homeowner's paying for that home. You might give to certain needs in the home church, but you didn't buy that couch. It's uncomfortable. Just sit somewhere else. Bring your own chair. Number 8, we move from where we go to who we are. That church is not a destination. Church is an identity. It's a gathering of people who share identity in Christ. It's not an address on the map. Our home church moves around all the time, so much so every week I got to send out a message. It's going to meet here. It's going to meet there. Da, da. If new people get on the group, I've got to say, okay, and by so-and-so's house, I mean such and such address. Or so I've got to think about, new people and make sure they can get there. Church is not a meeting place. It's very tempting to think that when you have a reserved building for that. But when you bring it in your home, it's just kind of who we are. It's what we do. Number 9, the church calendar goes from highly planned to highly organic. So what we want to see is that people are just naturally connecting, saying, hey, come to my house, let's go to lunch. Oh, our kids are going to hang out. Like, there's not a program for that. There's not a calendar for that. Like, we're not trying to calendar everybody's social life within the church. They want to spend time together because it's energizing and edifying, encouraging. And so there's not a big, strict church calendar programming plan. It's happening. And it's beautiful, and that makes it more natural and impactful. Authority. We move from titles, positions, credentials, hierarchy to mutuality, spiritual maturity, recognizing gifts, and using gifts. You say, you have a shepherding gift, shepherd people. So it becomes relational rather than just positional. Sometimes the traditional church thing gets messed up because there's people in positions who are acting in a way that is not aligned with how that position is supposed to act because they're not relational. But in home church, you're not in a certain position. There's not really the positions that we see in the traditional church. There is no moving ahead in influence or whatever, not that you're even seeking that, without relationality, without love. Number 11 is relying on the church for your spiritual diet. People just maybe come twice a month. They hear 2 sermons a month. They probably don't go to Bible class, and they never read their Bible. And in home church, we send out messages during the week. We encourage each other in this. We're to be people of the Word. We get new people in. We just try to help disciple people and teach you what's in the Bible. If you don't know the basics, let's learn the basics and how all these pieces fit together and what the story is. And, let me show you, memorize the books of the Bible. No one's here to do that for you. There is not a mentality of this is done for you anymore. Number 12 is our metrics. You got to deprogram the kind of things that you think are important things to count. If you want to know what's important to a church, watch what they count. And the old metrics are, attendance, baptisms. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm not saying attendance is not important on some level. Like, you got to know kind of who's there. Contribution. Is the budget up or is it down? Well, there's more important things to count than that. That become a lot more easier to notice in the home than in the building, because in the building, boy, we got a mortgage and a $1,000, $5,000 power bill every month because this thing sits empty and being air conditioned all day. Tens of thousands of square feet. It's like, well, when someone's already paying their power bill and they're already paying their mortgage, then you don't have to spend time thinking about that with the money, right? So the metrics change. Things like, are you maturing in your faith? Are you growing as a follower of Jesus? Are you sharing your faith? Do you grow in love? Some of these things are a little hard to quantify, but they're things we should be paying attention to. Are your eyes and ears to hear and see God growing? Are you perceiving his movement in your life more than you did 6 months ago? These are important metrics, but it takes a reprogramming. We're just so used to going, well, last week we had 15 in-house church, and this week we had 10, so, oh no, we lost 20 or 30% of our people. Pay attention to who's not there, but not about just the metrics. It's about the people. It's about the love. Number 13 is giving. Giving changes. And I've talked about this before. I'll put a card up on the screen about that will point to that video, so you can just click right there and go to it. I don't invite you to my house to pass a plate around and get your money. Now, you can give online. People can give. We encourage people to be generous to the work of the home church, but also the work in the community or needs that pop up. All kinds of things come up that our members find people who we connect with and help. But we don't make a big deal out of giving. In fact, Paul said, do not give under compulsion. And he said, give cheerfully. And passing the plate doesn't seem to lend well to either of those to me. I'm not saying it's a sin. I'm just saying it's not something you invite people to your home to do. The roles change. You have to deprogram your mind from greeter and usher and parking lot attendant to host of the home, participant, encourager. I'm here to love. I'm here to share. I'm here to encourage. I'm here to hug. When we're appropriate with those who are huggers, right? But we're not into all these roles, all these bases that have to get covered, right? Because we've simplified things and we've made it more natural. And so the roles are just more natural. They're not so well orchestrated and scheduled and refined in quite the same way. Number 15, I mentioned earlier, but I said I would talk about it again, is moving from consumer to contributor. That whole idea, I've come to get, no, it wasn't to my liking, and this was too fast, and this was too slow. That's a consumer mindset. It's like, I come and I give, and I should get this the way I want it, because that happens at McDonald's, and that happens at Walmart, and that happens at da-da-da-da. Not that way in the body of Christ. You don't just give so you can get in the body of Christ. It's never worked that way, although places allow it to be that way. Sometimes, so-and-so complained, oh no, they're a big giver. That's tempting. I'll say it's tempting. And I'm not saying every church caters to that. There are some heroes out there who don't cater to that. Many, but it is tempting. We have to see ourselves as contributors, and that means deprogramming this entitlement mindset that comes with the traditional church for many people. And they've been allowed to operate that way for decades, and it's unfortunate. You will not be allowed to operate that way in my living room. And you will know it. You will know better, because it doesn't feel right to talk like that in a living room, okay? We move from dependence to interdependence. Dependence on the preacher, dependence on the worship thing, dependence on this, dependence on the program to evangelize the community, dependence on the marketing budget to send out Facebook ads. It's like, no, now I've got to invite my neighbor. No, I've got to make a disciple. No, I'm going to go on a prayer walk. No, we're going to participate. And that's when we grow and transform. Number 18, we move and deprogram obligation in reprogramming desire. For so many years, it was such an obligation to go to church, to be at church, to do the thing, and to teach the class and all this. And for many of those years, I got paid to do it. Now, I did that before I got paid to do it. I love teaching class and sharing things and all that, but it can become very easily an obligation. And it could become an obligation in a home church. I'm not saying it can't, but I think it's much more natural for it to become obligatory in the big room than it is in the living room. And now all of a sudden we say, man, this deep transformational stuff, the sharing, the worship together, like the singing together, the prayers, the spontaneity, the move of the Spirit, like, oh, I can't wait for Sunday. Like, I just can't wait to be there. I want to be with my people. I want to experience this with them and to see how God moves. He's going to move. We pray every Saturday night on Zoom for God to move. On Sunday, we got a tiny little group of people. But we've been doing it pretty much every Saturday with a couple exceptions for 5 years. And it's wonderful. And God moves. He moves. 19 is we reprogram discipleship. Discipleship's not a sermon. Discipleship's not a Bible class. Discipleship is rarely practiced by churches. 4% or less is the big study we've talked about before of churches are seriously making disciples. But in home church, it's much more natural. It's much more natural to walk alongside people in their faith than it is in the big room. So there's a reprogramming of discipleship. Some preachers think they're making disciples when they preach, and I would say You might be supplementing disciple-making activities when you preach, but you're not making you are not individually or personally discipling 500 people in a sermon. It's not a thing. 19 is huge. No, it was 19. And the last one, number 20, this is the doozy. It's the kids. You have to reprogram the way you think about the kids. There's not a youth ministry. There's not a youth minister. There's not a children's program. You know, we do take our kids out periodically for children's lessons. We have recently made a shift in our home church where the older kids are now being intentionally trained in how to teach class and facilitate discussion and being given curriculum and working through it with them to simplify it. And then they teach the younger kids. So our older kids are now being discipled to the next level by them teaching and learning to teach and sharing their faith and sharing biblical information with other people. And our kids came up with that as we were praying about what to do about that. And so it's not a drop-off mentality anymore. It's a hands-on, participatory, intentional disciple-making effort for our kids. We do not silo them off. They are full participants in the body life. When you're in a living room, it's much easier for them to share a testimony, to ask for a prayer, to pray a prayer, than in the big room where the high control, because kids, you just don't know what they're going to do. But that makes it even more spirit-led, because sometimes kids are just more spirit-led. And when you let them loose, you let them fly, some amazing things can start to happen that I never saw in big church because it was just so controlled, and kids would never be up front and to have a microphone, right? But in the living room, it makes an awful lot of sense because they're part of this family too. And there's one bonus item. I cannot leave out the reprogramming of how we see prayer. I've never prayed before in my life like I've prayed since we started home church. We just have so much more dependence, and like if God doesn't help us, it's going to be an absolute mess. And so that's that wilderness time. If God doesn't help us, it's going to be an absolute mess. If God doesn't come through, it's going to be an absolute mess, because you're on a deeper level of intimacy in the lives of people, into the messiness of people. They share more. You have a better understanding of what people are going through. Therefore, you're praying about more deep and intimate things than you do with hundreds of people, thousands of people in the big church. And so the prayer gets reprogrammed. Our dependence on God gets reprogrammed. Fasting comes into the mix. And it's just absolutely a faith game changer. What's your 22? What's your 23? I want to tell you about a ministry tool that I've developed called Home Church Resources. And it's an online learning community where we offer training, online courses, tools, coaching, place to ask your questions, place to get prayer. And we do this together. And I'm helping people in multiple countries, multiple states, begin home churches and make disciples. And we're making these shifts, these mindset shifts, and we're putting these things into action. This channel, I don't feel like I have any integrity if all I do is talk about it. So we are home church practitioners. We are disciple makers. And these are mindset shifts that we've had to make, and I'm just wanting to pass this on to you. But if you're considering starting a home church, I would love to connect with you, and I'm putting my email address at the bottom here that you can reach out to me and let me know that you have an interest in home church, and I would love to get you plugged into this this training so that you can get what you need to get this thing off the ground and follow the calling that God's given to you. Appreciate you, love you, and we'll talk again soon. And if you haven't hit like and subscribe, time to do that, but watch this other video.